It hasn't even been a week since Trump won the election, and we're already seeing some buyer's remorse from high-profile Trump supporters who, I guess, are surprised that he's stacking his cabinet full of neocons. And I don't know what these people expected, because when he was president the first time, he did just that, and he governed as a neocon because he's a neocon. So I don't know why they thought it would be different this time, but nonetheless, some in MAGA world aren't too happy right now with some of these reported picks. But before we get to their coping and seething, I do want to talk about some of these choices because they are bad. They're really bad. So bear in mind that some of these aren't confirmed yet, but nonetheless, we have an idea of what it's going to look like, and it's not good. So for UN ambassador, he chose Elise Stefanik. This is a pro-Israel imperialist, so not good. For ambassador to Israel, he named Mike Huckabee, a neocon and fundamentalist Christian who believes that Israel should be in total control of the region, since that sets the stage for Jesus Christ's return. And one of the Israeli ministers, I don't know if it was Ben-Gvir or Smotrich, but they said they have a plan for total annexation of the West Bank, and they hope that the United States goes along with it. And Mike Huckabee would absolutely be thrilled to carry out that plan, because he doesn't even use the words West Bank to talk about the West Bank. He thinks that that's an offensive name because it's Judea and Samaria, according to him. So that's definitely cause for concern if you care about the Middle East, and in particular Palestinians who are suffering right now, because it's going to get a lot worse. Now, there's also dog killer Kristi Noem, who will be Homeland Security Secretary, and white nationalist Stephen Miller will act as Deputy Chief of Staff. There's Mike Waltz, who is another neocon who's going to serve as National Security Advisor. This is somebody who wants to reinvade Afghanistan, and he wants boots on the ground in Ukraine, American boots on the ground in Ukraine, just to be clear. So he wants a direct confrontation between the United States and Russia. We're talking somebody who wants World War III. So that's a little bit alarming, to put it mildly. Now, Trump also tapped Tom Homan as Border Czar. Now, this is the former acting head of ICE, and he was a contributor to Project 2025. And I'm going to talk more about him later, because this guy, he relishes in pain and suffering of others, and he helped to craft Donald Trump's family separation policy. And now he's going to play a huge part in Trump's mass deportation plan, although it's unclear what his specific job will be. But it seems like Trump has big plans for him, and he's talking a lot lately about what he's going to do. Now, last but not least, there's Marco Rubio, formerly Little Marco from Donald Trump, and he is reportedly going to be Donald Trump's Secretary of State. Now, this has not been confirmed yet at the time that I record this video, but Trump allies are already mad about this, and before this report came through about him being Secretary of State, Trump allies were lobbying heavily against this decision. For example, journalist Hannah Trudeau reports RFK Jr. does not want Senator Marco Rubio to be nominated for Secretary of State, I'm told by source, who says he will be advocating for someone who is less neocon. And that someone, as Politico reports, was likely Rick Grenell, a gay Trump ally, LOL, who served as Director of National Intelligence and Ambassador to Germany under the first Trump administration. Now, the problem is he may have screwed himself over by thirsting a little bit too hard for the position. Quote, some people close to Trump did not like that Grenell appeared to be actively lobbying for the role of Secretary of State, a major no-no in Trump world. But another person who was also thirsting real badly for that position was huckster Tulsi Gabbard, who claims that she's anti-war, but seems to make an exception when it comes to wars against Muslim countries. But months ago, when Trump was considering Marco Rubio as his running mate, Tulsi Gabbard sounded the alarm back then, and I want you to listen to the reasoning she gave as to why Trump should avoid Marco Rubio at all costs.
I think it would be a huge mistake for President Trump to choose him, because he represents the neocon warmongering establishment of Washington, D.C., which stands diametrically opposed to the very policies that President Trump has always stood for, going all the way back to when he ran for president in 2016 through that first term in office, and the things that he's talking about wanting to do now. And it would send the wrong message to a lot of folks who are very concerned about the fact that we are on the brink of war with Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. If Marco Rubio is his vice president, then that is what we will face, and it will cause a lot of people to question what kind of foreign policy will actually be executed. Will be the one that Trump wants and stands for, or will it be one that will continue the deep state neocon warmongers who've gotten us into the mess that we are in now?
Looks like it's going to be the deep state neocon warmongers who got us into the mess we're in now. And Marco Rubio will have far more influence over Trump's foreign policy as Secretary of State than he would as Vice President. So this is the worst case scenario for Tulsi Gabbard. Looks like that brown nosing that she was doing didn't pay off. So sad. But other MAGA diehards also aren't taking the news too well. For example, libertarian comedian Dave Smith says Marco Rubio is a disaster. Might as well give Liz Cheney the State Department. Awful sign. Wall Street Silver says Marco Rubio is a neocon. Not sure why Trump nominated him for Secretary of State. Might be because maybe he's a neocon himself. Another large pro-Trump account on Twitter says Rubio, was Hillary unavailable? I mean, if only we had some kind of a record that we could look to in order to get a sense of what Trump's foreign policy would be like, right? I wish we had that. I mean, this is what you voted for. We warned you that Trump was a neocon. We warned you about his foreign policy record, but you didn't listen. You plugged your ears and called us cucks or whatever. And now we're all fucked because of your stupidity and ignorance. But in case you weren't paying attention when he was president the first time and didn't listen to what we were saying about his foreign policy, here's just some of the things that he did as president with regard to foreign policy, as explained by Kyle Kulinski. He increased drone strikes 432%, 2,243 drone strikes in his first 2 years alone. That's more than 8 years of Obama combined. He kept us in Iraq and Afghanistan, 330% increase in civilian deaths in Afghanistan, bombed Syria twice, bombed Somalia, occupied a third of Syria to, quote, take the oil, increased the military budget every year, let Israel illegally annex the Golan Heights, which is Syrian, assassinated a top Iranian commander who was fighting ISIS, tried to coup Venezuela, ripped up the Iran agreement, armed Saudi Arabia as they did a genocide in Yemen, and vetoed a bill to cut off the weapons, dropped the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan, hired John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and Gina Haspel, all insane neocon warmongers, and let them run his foreign policy, pardoned Blackwater war criminals, signed pro-torture executive order, his first military raid as president killed an American little girl, and Kyle adds, I haven't even included in this list what he says he wants in his second term, war with Mexico, allow Israel to annex the West Bank. Yeah, I mean, this is why it's so important to inform yourself with facts before voting instead of just voting based purely on vibes. And if you were worried about the southern border before he was elected, wait until you see how unstable things become when he instigates a war with Mexico. That's what he said he wants to do. He is threatening to wage a literal war on drug cartels, which involves drone strikes. And if you think that violating the territorial sovereignty of our neighbor is going to go well for any of us, I've got terrible news for you. But don't complain if this is what you voted for. He told you he would turn the metaphorical war on drugs into a literal war on drugs. And if he follows through with this, lots of Americans are about to understand real quick what real insecurity on the southern border looks like. But a lot of these people deluded themselves into thinking that Trump actually was anti-war or that he would listen to them. But that was never going to happen. For example, a couple of days after the election, when it seemed like Donald Trump would tap Mike Pompeo again for a cabinet position, there was pressure from Trump supporters emerging to stop him from naming Mike Pompeo to any position, and they thought that they got a victory. For example, a couple of days after the election, libertarian comedian Dave Smith tweeted, "The Stop Pompeo movement is great, but it's not enough. Right now, we need maximum pressure to keep all neocons and warhawks out of the Trump administration. They've had their time at the table and brought nothing but disaster to the world and this country. America first, screw the war machine." Now, Trump Jr. actually responded to that, saying, "I agree 100%. I'm on it." To which Dave Smith responded, "Hell yeah, you're the man." And sure enough, Trump announced that he wasn't bringing Mike Pompeo back a day later. So it looked like they won. Until Arnaud Bertrand decided to rain on their parade, writing on Twitter, "I wouldn't want to tamper people's enthusiasm around this, but Trump literally chose Pompeo's former senior policy advisor, Brian Hook, to run the State Department's transition team." He later adds, "So it doesn't look even remotely likely that we're looking at a radical shift in U.S. foreign policy. The most contentious figureheads might be cast aside for aesthetic purposes, but the broad policy direction remains." I mean, yeah. And it is genuinely astonishing to me that people expected anything different. The U.S. war machine will continue to rage on, as it typically does, and even more people are going to suffer at the hands of Trump than they've suffered under Biden. Because for all of Biden's faults, Trump is worse in almost every conceivable way. But a lot of innocent people at home are also going to be in a bad position as well, not just people abroad. And Americans aren't going to be able to bury their heads in the sand like they can when it comes to foreign policy, because the human rights abuses that we're about to witness domestically will be right up in our faces. And you'll all know that it was financed by our tax dollars. So enter Tom Homan. Let's get back to him. This is Trump's Border Czar. Now, this is somebody who might literally be a sociopath who is chomping at the bit to inflict as much pain and suffering as he possibly can with this mass deportation plan. But don't take my word for it. Take his.
And look, I've seen some of these Democratic governors say they're going to stand in the way. They're going to make it hard for us. Well, a suggestion: if you're not going to help us, get the hell out of the way, because we're going to do it. So if we can't get assistance from New York City, and we may have to double the number of agents we send in New York City, because we're going to do the job. We're going to do the job without you or with you. So either help me or get the hell out of the way, but you're not going to stop me.
Will you need the military for that? And who else will you be leaning on to take on the drug cartels?
You're going to absolutely need military and special ops. I mean, President Trump has said that he's going to declare these criminal cartels terrorist organizations, which he should. We know who you are, and we're going to come and find you. So if you want to self-deport, that's fine. But criminals and gang members, they get no favors from this administration. You came to this country illegally, which is a crime. Frankly, I don't care what people think about me, especially on the left.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together. I've been called all kinds of names. I don't give a shit what people think about me. I never have and never will. Because the way they cancel you, well, let's say bad things about them. They don't even want to say anything anymore. They're not going to shut me up. Actually, when I go give speeches around the country, if protesters don't show up, I'm kind of disappointed. Because if they show up, it means my message is getting out. And I tell you what, Washington Post can do all the stories they want me about. Tom Homan deport people is really good at it. They ain't seen shit yet. Wait till 2025. I apologize, but I probably shouldn't say the S word. My wife tells me stop saying it, and
I had to include that last bit in the compilation because I just love how his wife is perfectly fine with him destroying millions of lives and talking about immigrants like a Nazi would, but she draws the line at naughty words. Okay, really interesting set of moral ideas you've got there, Mrs. Homan. But after watching that compilation, I think it's obvious that this man is a dangerous fascist, and he's also likely a white supremacist as well, although he has addressed that last allegation and claims that he's not a white supremacist, even though he did attend the event of neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, the Your Body, My Choice guy that Trump also had dinner with. But his excuse is that he didn't know. Sure. But regardless of what he does or doesn't call himself, it's clear that this man takes joy in being cruel. And he feels no remorse whatsoever for the family separation policy that he helped craft under the first Trump administration. And he is now broadcasting his intent to turn mass deportations into an entire spectacle. And conservatives are really looking forward to it. Case in point.
And there will be massive clashes because you're going to have cameras out there making sure that they capture the images of ICE coming along and taking these people away. And they deserve to be taken away. Sometimes you have to do tough stuff. But AOC is going to be there tying herself to migrants. It's going to be hysterical. But sometimes dad has to do the tough thing.
These people are genuinely monstrous. And Jesse Waters admitted that his own mother didn't invite him to Thanksgiving. She didn't say why, but he gets the sense that it was because of his support for Donald Trump and likely fascistic beliefs. I mean, would you want somebody like that, giddy at the thought of human suffering, to be at the dinner table with you? Would you want to break bread with somebody like that? I wouldn't. So, I mean, the right is salivating over this mass deportation plan, and you want to know who else is salivating right now? The private prison industry. They can't wait to build the internment camps that the Trump administration is going to use, and they're already saying that they think that mass deportation is going to be a major boon for their industry. So I don't think that people understand what is about to unfold. We are about to witness human rights abuses on a massive scale, and a lot of conservatives, will be downright giddy about it as it happens. But a poll before the election found that 47% of Americans support rounding up immigrants and placing them in militarized camps. So we'll see if that still holds when they actually are confronted with the human suffering on a daily basis. I'm assuming that some of them might regret their votes, but I mean, we've been witnessing a literal genocide in Gaza for over a year, and Americans couldn't care less. So maybe this is just what people want. Maybe half the country really are a bunch of cruel sociopaths. Who knows? But regardless, Trump's cabinet is a reflection of what he told us he was going to do. Some people are shocked because they were stupid or ignorant enough to project their own beliefs onto Donald Trump. Others, like myself, aren't surprised at all because we actually follow facts as opposed to feelings or vibes, which is why it's so important to have a media diet that consists of people that aren't going to bullshit you. But this is only the beginning, so buckle up because we're in for a wild ride, and I don't know how many more people are going to be surprised with what they see, but I think those of us who've been paying attention, this is exactly what we expect. And we're going to be able to mentally prepare for the disaster that's about to come, even though you can't really ever mentally prepare to see that much human suffering. But some people are going to be shocked. Others, they're going to love it. Either way, it's going to get ugly.
Mike is a total shitlib. Once he started shilling for the DNC, I stopped watching. So I definitely won't be hitting the subscribe button or turning on notifications by clicking the bell. No way. It's very sad, I know.